If you can do it all over again, what would you do differently? All the people I've talked to who take personal growth seriously are always willing to share tips they wish they knew when they were younger. It's not a weird thing where they're crippled by regret or paralyzed by the missed opportunities. They've simply learned key lessons that would have been so valuable earlier in their lives. In this video, I'll share the 7 biggest regrets I have from starting my coaching business. All right, we're here with another live session. I think these conversations are so fun to have. The hypothetical situations of life. And I know some people get into I never have regrets, but for me, as a coach, I think it's so pivotal to kind of think through success strategically. So I think through, if you thought through success as a word, or if you broke down the letters, here's a little bit of how I would break it down. One way I would be thinking through, whether it's my present or even as I look through into my past, is what things would I have maybe kept exactly the same? What do I wish I would have done less of? And maybe even what do I wish I would have done? So as we continue this series, the goal is to continue to provide value to the group of coaches that are coming up. I want to continue to build them up to have the insight that maybe I didn't have as we move forward. So the first lesson that I want to share, that my first regret, is not having a media kit. I neglected to build a media kit right off the jump. And if you don't know what a media kit is, it's just like it's a handout, a pamphlet of the services that you offer that you might give to a member of the media so that they would understand what you do, how you do it, and even the price points that you offer. And I've talked about this concept with another coach, and he also mentioned how beneficial he believed a media kit would be, because when we're starting out, we can be insecure and hesitant with offering the price of our services. But when we offer a pamphlet, or when we offer this media kit, then people are able to see really plainly what our prices are. It's not something we negotiate with and we really come down from. And again, and you might, but having it in one solid form, whether if you're in person and you're handing that out, or you're able to give them a link to your media kit. And I'll get a chance to show you what mine looks like at this point. And even this one that I'm about to show you has become outdated because I've continued to update it. I've continued to add more to it. I'll give you an example. Is one way I've added to it is, as I've spoken to other speakers and other coaches about the journey, and I've asked them, maybe I've asked and offered to even put them into the media kit so they can have additional exposure and opportunities to speak and coach in different avenues. So I've had conversations this past week even where we were discussing the prices that other people might want me to list for them in my media kit. But let me allow you to take a look at what that media kit looks like here. So we'll get that pulled up. So here is one of the versions of my media kits, a little bit older. You can see the front cover is the Elevate, Thrive, Prosper branding, where we were, this is kind of named after this seminar business that my friend, one of my best friends, Joseph Warren, and I started together. As you look through the media kit, you'll see, a little bit about the business. You'll see some of my professional experience, my work in the community, and some of my accomplishments. I listed 3 of the books that I've written, 2 of them that are coming out next year in 2023. Then you see through the next number of pages are the testimonials, is where friends are, prior clients or people who've heard me speak said, I would love to give you a testimonial. And they're in the kit, have their image, as you can see, their role or their professional position, plus the kind words they gave to me about the work that I do. You see over to the on the right, we have Claudia Galan, incredible attorney who's just representing Strong Life Scholars right here in the media kit. Again, I'll do a whole series on social proof because it's so relevant, but it's one way you just add significant authority and influence to what you do by showing other people endorsing who you are in how you operate. So we have Claudia Galan again on the right. Then we have some of the rates and the perspective. So how much do I charge for a speech or a full day workshop or a 2-day workshop? How much do I charge for one-on-one coaching sessions? So that's all built in here in this program. Then a little bit of a background of my story here on the left. And then you see a little bit of the information for people about seminars on the right. This is the calendar that we had created for seminars that we were doing in 2022. And then finally, you just have the back cover that has just the business name and then phone number, email, and websites. As you can see, it wasn't anything super fancy. It wasn't anything that you couldn't also have for yourself. And you could even have a 1, 2, or 3, 4 pager. It doesn't have to be as complex as mine. But that's one regret I had, because when people were asking my prices, there was so much of me that was back and forth and wasn't set on what my price should be, which leads into point number 2, or regret number 2, which is neglecting to interview other coaches and speakers. One of the most powerful ways for you to get ahead in really any industry is to interview people who are ahead of you. And I'll get a chance to show you maybe what some of those questions would be if it was me. And this idea is so potent. I certainly didn't make it up, but this idea is so potent. I am not even convinced that, I mean, I think I'm still going to do this as far as interview other speakers and interview other coaches. And I pulled up the journal here. Is what are the best questions to ask other coaches and speakers? I know we're losing some of that site, so I'll just pull that up here. Okay. Here are some questions I would be asking if I were you. Okay, I would ask, how did you get your very first clients? What has been the best way to market coaching? And has it been the same for you marketing speaking? Another question I would ask is, what questions would you be asking if you were me as a new coach and speaker? So as you can see, there's the questions about how do you get your first client, and then I would ask them too, how did they figure out their pricing? And one of the most important questions you could ask, and this is kind of colored all through my paradigm and perspective, is there any way I can share about your next event, project, sale with my people? And notice this concept is, it's simply you're communicating, I want to add value to you. Is there any way I can share about your next event, project, your next sale with my people? So you might be building out your email list, or you might have a group text, or you might have different people. You could just tell about this other coach or this other speaker. It seems counterintuitive, yet you see it all over the place. It's a law of reciprocity. You give to the left, you receive from the right. You give up to the north, you receive from the south. And it's just this notion of reciprocity. That which you put out, you do get back. So that's the second one, which is, I wish I would have asked more questions from the other speakers and other coaches, and I think I would have been that much more ready. Plus, the universal principle of those who humble themselves will be exalted is also in the mix. All right, let's move to regret number 3, which is I joined BNI 8 months late. In the video that I made yesterday about, you can look it up, about how much I charged for my very first client. I talked extensively about BNI, so I won't talk a lot about BNI right now yet. So I joined BNI in July of 2019, yet I found out that my layoff was happening nationwide in November of 2018. So my perspective now is, if I could go back and I could do it again, or if I could tell somebody else, you may not join BNI, but the principles in BNI will absolutely serve you and help you. It's getting together with a group every single week and meeting with at least one person in a one-on-one setting to understand them and see how you could help them. Those are great recipes for business. So if I joined in July 2019, I would have had just another 8-9 months under my belt with BNI, again, building those connections, establishing those relationships. I delayed, I waited longer than I would have as I look backward. So that's regret number 3. Regret number 4. Not starting Patreon immediately. If you don't know what Patreon is, it's a subscription program where I think coaches can really leverage Patreon in a special way to add value to their clients and to really have a nice system organized. One of the best pieces of advice I received early on, although I didn't know exactly how to implement it, is Paul Martinelli, who was training a number of the John Maxwell speakers and coaches. He shared, you build out a coaching business, you build out a speaking business with a product, program, or service for every price point. Here's what that might look like, and here's what that means. So I'll pull back up the journal, and let's say if we were, so first let me break down product, program, and service. So if I was going to go product, program, service. So this might be book, might be ebook, could be a digital, 4 hours of your speaking, and looks like I'm running out of room on the share program. I'll share about service real quick. This is like giving one speech. This is one coaching session. This is one workshop, one seminar. One seminar. There we go. A program might be an 8-week master, 8-week. I'm gonna call it small group. I'll put that in parentheses. So it's coming back over and over again. So it's repetitive. It's an agreement in the coaching program. So the idea was to have a product, program, or service for every single price point. And the principle we're on is not starting in Patreon immediately. So I don't think I understood exactly what I memorized the quote clearly. I'm mentioning it now, but I didn't grasp the significance of having a $5 option for people, having a $10 option for people, having a $20 option for people. And so when you're starting out, again, you might want those big clients that are paying, whatever. It could be $100 an hour, $200 an hour, $300, $400, $700 an hour. Yet understanding fundamentally, many people can't afford that. And some people who can afford it wouldn't even want to pay that. But does that mean that every single person who can pay that or wouldn't want to pay that, does that mean that there's not any value you can add to them for a lower price point? And I think there is. So as we get into this, what I'm going to do is share my Patreon page so you can see what that looks like and what it might look like for you. And anybody could go over to my Patreon page. It's not limited to any one person. So if you went over to my Patreon page, here's what you would see. All right, you're able to see that. Let me move this real quick and I'll just restructure. There we go. So the Patreon page right here, you're able to see, right? You have a $5 a month option. So if you think through it, if you're a coach or a speaker and you're thinking through how can I add value to people who could only pay me $5 a month, is that a page of content? Is it 2 pages? What is it? How often is it? Is it just a general sponsorship? Like think about this real quick. If you're jumping into a coaching business, you might have a lot of friends and family members who would love to support you. They might not be able to support you with, again, $700 a month, yet they might be more than willing to support you at just paying $5. Again, it might not seem like anything, but having people in your ecosystem to add significant value to them on an ongoing basis can help them to be better equipped to share your story and tell other people about what you do. So here you could see, again, the $10 a month option, a $20 a month option, the $30, $50, $60, $70, $80, $100, $150. So it goes all the way up to, I think we have, again, $1847.58, which ends up being about $2,000 with taxes a month. So the reason I regret this is because I don't think I just understood and believed that I could add value at every single price point. I believed that the larger price points, but I didn't fully understand and grasp the other options. So think about this. If you went over to my Patreon page, not even to join it, but you just went over to the page just to see how you might want to structure your Patreon page or your subscription model. There's other subscription pages that are not Patreon, but you might think about us using Patreon if it can add value to the people in your circle to help build them up. Let's move to regret number 5. I quit video games 8 months too late, in my opinion. So I think when I was transitioning away from Nationwide, I think I was playing a lot of NBA 2K. Again, nothing wrong with video games, yet I remember the day when I said, there's no way I can continue playing video games and spending hours of my life doing this. I gotta do something different. So making that decision, I think it was, again, it's also around July of 2019. But I look back now and I see that so much of the time playing video games that had zero impact could have been, again, writing my first book and then writing the second book. It could have been learning, again, even live streaming. I'm still uncomfortable in the live streaming space. I'm growing in the skill. but I'm certainly not established in the skill. But I ask now, what if I was just sharpening the axe, sharpening the skill, instead of, looking at, again, playing games? What if I was just, looking at videos about how to be a great live streamer, about how to structure a book? What if I was learning about graphic design? But so that was one of the regrets I have as I look back, as I would have quit video games earlier in the journey. So that's regret number 5. Let's go to regret number 6. Here's one. It's leading with multiple job titles. And I'll go ahead and go back to the note tablet so we could look back at that. So what happens with us as coaches is we're often multidimensional, right? So who are you? And even on your business card, on your bookmark, it's like, oh, well, I'm a coach, speaker, trainer, author. Like, again, you get this podcast host. I mean, you just can list so much of what you do. Not a bad thing, but there's a principle I learned later that it hit me a lot more. It hit me differently. I'm going to explain this to you right now. So the concept is that you only get to occupy one area of a person's mind. And the more you dilute that area, the less you'll be remembered. And if you think about big brands and how they've built their business, so we'll take Starbucks. Again, they became known first for coffee. That was the main thing. The main thing was the plain thing. The plain thing was the main thing. It was coffee. So if you knew Starbucks in the beginning, it was this coffee. And then later on, they added all of the extras. So when it comes to coaching, somebody gave me that insight along the way that you instead of coaching, speaking, training, author, podcast host, to pick one and focus on that one area. It doesn't mean that you can't do the others, but every time you introduce yourself, if you give people that you're meeting in these networking connections, if you tell people you do 4 things, it's very likely they're not going to remember anything about you. But if you tell people that you do one thing, it's very likely that they're going to remember who you are and what you do. And you want people to associate you as a coach or as a speaker or as a trainer or as a podcast host. Now, later on, you can be the Tony Robbins, who's the coach, author, seminar host, all these things. But people often don't start out with all these things. So the idea is you spend 5 to 10 years. This is from another guy who wrote the book, The Millionaire Messenger. And he said you spend 5 years in mastering one area, not all of them. And that was a mistake I made, which if you saw my business card, you would have saw speaker, coach, trainer, podcast host, a speaker, coach, trainer, podcast host. But again, most people aren't going to remember you if you give them too many things. But if you narrow their focus in remembering you, you're going to widen the impact of people being able to remember you. And if they can remember you, they might think about you for themselves as a client, or they might be able to effectively tell your story to somebody else. So the regret is leading with multiple job titles instead of just the one job title. And last but not least, this is a big one. Is not documenting more of the story. And that's why I'm doing this now. I still want to capture I mean, I'm 3.5 years in now, but there's so much of the story early on that. So here's what my encouragement to you would be: is even if you don't want to document it publicly, although I think that would be beneficial, if you just want to document it privately, and knowing you might one day, a year, 2 or 3 years from now, reveal those videos you make for yourself or those journal entries you make for yourself. I just wish I did a better job documenting the journey so that when you're hitting those milestones, when you're achieving some of those goals, you're able to look back and see where you were. You can look at those videos, you can read those posts, you can look at those journal entries and see how far you've come. The other part of it is people are able to see you as the underdog. You only get to be a beginner at the beginning. It sounds basic, right? You only get to be a beginner at the beginning. So if you maximize the time as a beginner, where you're not expected to be super successful out of the gate, and that could be a cognitive gap that we feel like, oh, I got to show people how successful I am. Well, you just show people authentically where you're at. It's something that I wish I would have done a better job of telling people. Right? Like, I wanted, if I could look back, what if I had told people, hey, I just got my first client. You know, if I told people, hey, you know, and I got the accountability in pursuing building this business. So that's the last one, which is document the story. So if you're a coach or you know somebody who is a coach, drop your question in the chat so I can circle back and answer some of these questions. I know somebody asked me on the chat yesterday. They asked specifically about how could they get my coaching book, and I haven't said this here yet online at least, but one way you can get my coaching book, you could also get my speaking book, and then you could get the lineup of my journals as well, is by joining us on the Patreon. So there's a little bit of a graphic for you. Partner with us on Patreon. If you want to know how to find us on Patreon, you go over to MaximumThrive.com and it will redirect you to the Patreon page. If you join any of the tiers, what will happen is that it will ask for your address, and I'll be sure that those gifts are given to you once a month until you have the books and you have the journals. But with that said, that's the video for tonight. I know this is a late night video, but the purpose was I made a commitment to myself that I would begin being better at documenting the journey, and I'll document every day until I got a lot of the ideas that I had inside out there into the world. But we'll see you on the next video. Thank you so much, and have a great one.